I checked anyway.
Short chairs.
I was all excited that you were going to discuss the me.
I just wanted to double check. That works. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Catherine, are you good? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. If we can reconvene our meeting to open session, the board has been in executive session since 6 o'clock to discuss a student disciplinary matter. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Introductions.
Dave Hurst.
John Walston.
Catherine Nadeau.
Meredith Moriarty.
Jody Monroe?
Holly Dellenbaugh.
Christine Beck.
Robert Tejan.
Willow Bear.
John McPhillips.
First up, do we have any PIG students with us tonight? Welcome. Thanks for coming. Your obligation is to stay until 9 o'clock or when the meeting is over, whichever one comes first. And when you guys leave, there are, or we will have, if we don't already have them, there's some sign-out sheets for you guys to sign out just to make sure you get credit for being here, okay? First is the approval of minutes. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the April 5th, 2023 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item 3, meeting reports. First is our superintendent's report.
Thank you. Yesterday, our SROs, Mike Bourbon and Caitlin Craigie, and I all attended a joint meeting with area superintendents, school resource officers, representatives from the state police and the FBI to learn and discuss more about the recent swatting incidences that have been happening to schools. It was a great presentation. The FBI presented how these are occurring and at multiple levels. The data is important for schools to preserve, and also the roles that everyone plays to address these disruptions for our students, staff, and families, as well as local communities. So we will continue having some ongoing conversations about how to best address those to prevent disruptions, but I thought it's the first time we've had a meeting like that. I thought it was very productive. I'd also like to congratulate Jen Spila, I see in the back there. She is on the agenda tonight for appointment to the Director of Student Services. She'll be replacing Kathy Johnston, who's retiring at the end of the school year. This position is a bit different from the current role, where the director will not only oversee special education, but they will also supervise our counseling services and our multi-tier system of services instructional support programs. The shift to this new position will hopefully bridge the gap between special education and intervention services, ultimately best meeting the needs of all of our students. So I'd like to recognize Jen. I don't know, Jen, if you have anything you'd like to say at this time?
You don't have to, but you're welcome to come up and say something if you'd like.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I just wanted to thank the board for this wonderful opportunity. I'm so excited, and I'm honored to be selected to be filling this role, and I can't wait to jump right in, although I know not until July 1st, but I will be just so excited, and I'm honored. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
And that's all I have, if anyone has any questions.
Any questions for Jody?
I'm going to stand and approach the mic. So you had said that the position will oversee counseling, MTSS, and there was a third one.
Special ed.
Thank you. And then could you just speak, for anybody who's not following this quite as closely, any plans or any kind of additional shifts that you could foresee coming as a result of bringing all of these under the same umbrella, and just give a bit of background on that?
So the assistant directors that are currently in place for MTSS, special education, and counseling will still remain the same. The CSE chairs will still kind of follow underneath the assistant director of special ed. So I think the real benefit is that currently there's not that direct connection between intervention services aligning and making sure that we're doing everything we should be doing prior to any referral to special education. So it really improves communication. There's a continuum of services that students can get prior to needing any special education services. So I'm hoping that we started to do that a little more this year with really the development under Jen's leadership with MTSS. So I think that will just continue to grow.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next is our board report, and I just quickly wanted to say that I look forward to the Eagle Challenge that is coming up. Look forward to participating and volunteering at it, and I hope to see a lot of people there. Anybody have anything else that they want to share? I feel like it's with the break in the middle, there hasn't been that much going on. Okay. Next are our student reports. Do we have anyone from the Student Senate?
Hello, good evening. I'm Elizabeth Baldwin, the president of the high school Student Senate. And in Student Senate, we don't have much to report that's different than last week. But last week I talked about how Student Senate is sponsoring one leg of the Eagle Challenge. And at that leg, there will be a lot of different first responder vehicles like fire trucks. There'll be one of those really big horses that the police have. And we're encouraging kids and families to come to see these vehicles and see the insides of them, and if you're lucky you could play on one. We're trying to get one of those cool cranes for everyone to see, and so we encourage students and families to come and hang out and get to know them, as well as go to other legs of the Eagle Challenge. I know that there is live music on Friday evening by a lot of our high school students, and so yeah, we're all looking forward to it. Thank you.
Do you know what time the leg is that the?
Oh, yes, the big truck event that Student Senate is sponsoring is 12 to 4, so noon to 4 p.m. on Saturday.
On Saturday,
Thank you.
okay. Just in case we have any interested truck enthusiasts with us tonight. Do we have anyone from the middle school? And do we have any friends from Slingerlands here with us tonight?
Our class has done some amazing activities so far this year. We had a classroom trial to determine whether Columbus Day should be a national holiday. Some parents and teachers participated. We also had a wax museum where we dressed up as famous historical figures and told people our accomplishment. Currently, we're working on an argument essay and researching the pros and cons of iReady. We even interviewed the CEO of Curriculum Associate and asked if and how iReady will be improved for English language learners. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Priscilla. This spring there are many fun and exciting activities taking place here at St. Louis. On May 10th, the school will have the Scholastic Book Fair and the Around the World Cultural Fair. For the Cultural Fair, families are invited to share examples of their culture, customs, and traditions. Did you know that our school has a school newspaper? It is called the Soaring Eagle, and there have been 2 issues published so far this year. We are putting out a 3rd issue later this month. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zevda. Some of the 3rd grade classes are doing a countries project.
Hi, my name is Brock. We are researching a different country on the following topics: landforms and climate, people, history, and customs. We also made titles for our country books. We are doing the research using Pebble Go, Rolled with Kids, and more.
The final project will consist of a book made on the computer using Google Slides. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kubra. This year we have done a lot of fun activities in PE class, such as gymnastics, Scooter City, and field day at the end of the year. The science fair was held on March 2nd. Over 100 students participated. My project was a bouncing egg. I got a bowl, then I put the egg inside a bowl, then I filled it with vinegar, and I waited one day, and I peeled the shell off, and it became a bouncing egg. Our school started a recycling and compost program at lunch. Students empty recyclables in the recycle bin. Students toss all leftover food in the compost bin. We are hoping this will help the environment and make everyone aware of what we throw out every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, students. You guys did an amazing job. So really well done. And that's it for our Shooting with Purpose letter lesson.
Thank you so much. I think I think you guys should send some of those iReady essays to Dr. Hurst when you're done.
Holly, too?
Part of the plan.
Yeah, you guys come on up here. I have a special pin for you.
Mr. Baker, maybe when you're done with your next edition of the newspaper, you can send copies over for the board. It is. Great job. There you go. Nice. Thank you.
I have a copy here, which I can. So So thank you guys for coming. You are more than welcome to stay, but if you would like to go home, you can do that also. Next on our agenda tonight are presentations. And our first presentation is a bond project update. And I don't know if you want to wait just 1 minute while our friends leave.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight's presentation is an update of the 2021 capital bond project. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce a couple of members of our project team. Drew Jones from Ashland McGraw Architects, Mike Collins from Turner Construction Company, who is our construction manager, and Brian Bodner from Operations and Maintenance. We have some good news that the district has finally received full state education department approval for all elements of the project last Tuesday the 11th, after an 8-month review period. I'll summarize the project status and the recommended actions needed to begin construction in the next few slides. So just to recap, that the total referendum was approximately $40.7 million with about 200 scope elements. The project total would benefit all buildings across the district, and it supports our district mission and four goal areas of academics, character, community, and wellness. And again, there was no impact on taxes for the residents. Update from last fall, October board meeting. So in October 22, prior to the project submission to State Education Department for review and approval, the construction manager completed a construction estimate that resulted in the project being over approximately $10.2 million, or 20%. With the goal in mind to maximize the amount of work included and have an awardable project once bids were received, we utilized some reduction strategies at that time, value engineering elements that operations and maintenance could do, lower priority reductions for low priority project elements. For example, some masonry repair. It was a lower priority and wasn't required this time. And some building envelope portions of the project. Back in the fall, that resulted in about 69 scope elements being reduced and brought the SED submission estimate to within budget. Just a quick revision now that we do have State Education Department approval. Bids were received on March 15th. As we all remember, we had a nice snowstorm on March 14th, so we delayed it one day and received bids on the 15th. This evening, we're looking for approval to award the contracts for the approved bidders, and if we are approved, construction will begin as soon as next week. The goal is to complete the project or continue to try to meet the late fall 2024 completion date. However, we are reviewing the schedule right now to ensure that we can accomplish that. So we did receive the public bids on March 15th. We solicited bids for 6 prime contractors, those being general construction or GC, site contractor, roofing, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical contractors. We only received 1 bid for the general construction, roofing, and plumbing contractors, which is not favorable for the district because that was less competition, and our bids may have been a little bit higher. So these are the bid details, and as we look at this chart, you can see that on the left side of it was our budget that we estimated we should carry for this portion of the construction. So the general contractor was 9.6. I won't read them all to you, but total in sum, they were approximately 23,972,000 is what we expected our bids to come in at. The actual bids, which is the center of the chart, were $29,185,999. All right, that resulted in a budget gap, not in our favor, of approximately $5.2 million. All right, so immediately the team began what we call qualifying and vetting the bids to make sure that they didn't carry something they shouldn't have or did carry something that they shouldn't have. So that way. All right. Immediately, we were able to reduce our construction contingency from 7.5% down to 5%. We were able to do that because with the 69 element reductions and the proposals this evening, the team felt comfortable in doing that because we've removed enough scope that we wouldn't need to carry that many dollars. All right. I just wanted to, for those that don't recall, there's three portions of our budget. One being the construction or the hard costs, what it actually takes to get the work done. Our incidental costs, which would be architect, construction manager fees, furniture, equipment, things like that. And our contingency would be for the unknowns, the unforeseen. An example would be when we get into construction, we could have a pipe behind the wall that may have hazardous material that was not expected. So that was our contingency. All right, so we're comfortable reducing that. And what that did is it reduced our overage or our gap by about $1.4 million, leaving a resulting 3.771,131 over budget without doing anything further. All right. The reasons that the bids were over budget. So we are still experiencing our supply chain, workforce issues, and inflation. It's not going down at this moment. It's either remaining flat or going up. Our escalation, and recall that we did start this estimating process back in 2019, so 3 years have passed. With our inflation and our escalation, it's not favorable to the district to be in this position with bidding. So our escalation factor was greater than anticipated. So industry standard is about 1% per month in escalation. Mechanical equipment alone increased 25% since December of '22, and roofing and specialty ceiling systems outpaced the escalation factor that we used as well. Another reason is we were out to bid later than anticipated. We submitted our project to State Education Department back in August, okay, and we just received SED approval on April 11th. So instead of 12 to 14 week review process, it took 8 months. So a lot of folks are out to bid ahead of us, and there's a lot of construction in the area, which leads into market saturation. In a nutshell, what that means is there's too much work and not enough contractors in the capital region. All right. Three of the 6 prime contracts only had one bidder. That shows that we didn't have a lot of folks bidding on our project, and it was a less competitive market for us. Some of the market saturation, a study was done by the construction manager, and I don't want to go into detail, but there's some major projects coming up. Not necessarily schools, but Albany Airport has a large project. Albany Charter Schools, Cohoes, Lansingburg, Gloversville, Schodack, Mechanicville, Duanesburg, Bird Hills, North Colony, et cetera, are all doing construction work in the capital region. And not to mention Guilderland, Glens Falls, and Queensbury that are, they were just ahead of us. Okay. I want to expand a little bit about that, about how Bethlehem came in. We're approximately 12% over budget when we received bids. That's not the fall. We were 20% over budget in the fall of '22 before we made some reductions. So Bethlehem was at 12% over budget after receiving bids. Local school district had a $30 million project, just a little smaller than ours. They came in at 28% over budget, and they too had a single bid for their plumber, one of the prime contractors. Another local had a $14 million project. They were 8% over bid of what they projected. And again, they as well had a single plumbing bid. The strategies that those districts used locally were similar to what we're recommending here this evening. One was finding other funding. One of them were able to use funds that they had secured for future phases of their project, and they reallocated that. They reduced their contingency as well, and they had post-bid scope reductions, similar to the recommendations for Bethlehem. And that was the same for both of these local school districts. So the project team met several times to review our options after we received our bids. All right, obviously, there's only a couple of things that we can do, and we looked at two of our options, or only had two options. One was to reduce the scope of work so that we meet budget and we can do an award, or excuse me, so we could award the project, or we could reject all bids and rebid the project at a later date. Those were our two options. Our recommendation to district administration at the time was to use option one, which is reduce the scope of work so that we meet budget. We did a study and determined that if we didn't reduce our scope now, we would be putting ourselves at severe risk in the future. The market saturation, we may not get any bids if we held off, and we don't know what the future holds. The escalation will continue to rise, and we would be facing that cost in the future. So we didn't know if we were going to get better or get worse, and that was a risk that we felt comfortable not making. Okay, next slide. So we had a reduction solution strategy for this post-bid was to, one, identify a few larger project elements. Again, we started out with around 200. We pared it down by 69 in the fall, and we feel that if we picked a few larger elements, that we could reduce the impact overall to the community, the school community. What I mean by elements, each one has a line item. So we could say, replace that curtain, refinish this floor, okay? We don't want to not do the curtain and the floor, so let's pick a project to where it's only going to affect one area. That was a really bad analogy because I used two things in the same place. Just realize that. But my point was, if we took a whole bunch of smaller elements away, we'd have to take this many, and you'll see this in a slide, to achieve the same budget gap reduction, okay? So we felt that if we identify a few of the larger project elements, it would lessen the overall impact to the entire district. And we'll get into that in a minute. So the other strategy was to rebid one of the larger elements in the fall using capital reserve funding to complete the work. And we will talk about that as well, but we'll have to use, the capital reserve would require voter approval, and depending on what happens this evening, we could make that happen and get the process started. We reviewed the construction and incidental sides of the budget for any reductions that we could find, and we identified additional value engineering items that we could incorporate some savings. So option one on this pie chart, I just want to do some explanation here. Option one is, just as I said, select 23 smaller elements plus the alternates that were part of the bid package, because we're over budget, so we certainly couldn't accept the alternates. So it ends up being 28 project elements being reduced. Or option two, select 4 larger elements, and as you can see by the pie chart, the blue is what we would keep in the project. The green is what we had to reduce back in the fall, and the orange is what we would have to reduce now. So option one shows we're reducing a lot more work in multiple areas versus the 9 if we chose just 4 larger elements. So I just want to talk quickly. I don't want to go line by line, but these 23 smaller elements, the board has the documentation to review, but An example of that would be at Glenmont, we would have to reduce stormwater, masonry repairs, window treatments, gym wall pads, the floors, the boilers, which is a significant reduction. At Hammer Grill, we would have to remove the doors and boilers, Slingerlands, window repairs, doors, cafeteria HVAC and domestic water line work. At the middle school, we would have to reduce the tennis courts, the field work, the fencing, EFIS, which is the exterior envelope repairs, and window repairs. At the high school, we would have to reduce tennis courts, stadium pavilion, cafeteria pavilion, kitchen plumbing, fire alarm replacement, and our main server room air conditioning. And then at transportation, we would have to limit our bus charging infrastructure to the primary service, the transformer, and only 2 charging stations, enough to support what we have, would have been the recommendation. Okay, and then at operation and maintenance, there's electrical panel upgrades that would have to be removed. Option 2 would be removing just 4 large elements, and in that would be the middle school auditorium, which we would recommend that we rebid that in the fall. Okay, there's a couple of caveats associated with that, and I'll talk about it in just a moment. You know, our feeling is that the reduction of 4 versus the 23 elements is more equitable to the school buildings and allows the district to get more project scope elements completed within this project within the budget. All right. It also allows us for reassessment of the design and renovation of these 4 project elements versus the proverbial half now, half later. As we got into the design, we realized that when we developed this scope, there was a specific need. All right, I'll use the example of the high school main office, which is one of the recommended. The high school main office, we needed to obviously freshen the space, make it more inviting, and make it more user-friendly. So we focused on the main office proper at the time of design, because that's what the immediate need was. As we got into our design, portions of the administration offices that are adjacent to it would have to be disrupted to repair the main office proper. Okay, so we would be going in and kind of messing up those spaces and not refurbishing the entire space. So as we went back and looked at our design, this would be a recommendation because we would want to do that space as a whole. Okay, that's what I meant by the half now, half later. And we don't want to undo work that we did in one project in the next project. Okay? The same holds true for the Glenmont classrooms, which is another. So the 3 large projects would be cleaner for including in the next capital bond project because it's a package. All right, and it allows us to reassess the needs of the spaces and allows for some concerns we have with logistics to meet our schedule. Our schedule did shorten up. Again, we plan on, our goal is to finish in late fall of 24, but we have been affected. All right, so Glenmont classrooms and Slingerland's cafeteria and kitchen would be a challenge for us to meet that goal, but we have measures in place that if we do this work, we'll do our best to make it happen. Okay, real quickly, I mentioned the alternates. We had 6 alternates built into the bid. 1 through 6, I'll read them quickly. Owner-preferred door hardware. I want to explain that. That is an alternate because it is public bid, and we cannot have, the contractors can bid, and they can give us an equal or equal. So we went through the last 5 years of redoing all of our keys and locks on all of the district doors as part of an internal project. We spent tens of thousands of dollars incorporating our security locks for every classroom door and the door hardware associated with that. If we did not have owner preferred, currently we have it's best is the manufacturer. We could get Schlage or something else, which wouldn't be the same as what we have now. So there was an owner-preferred door hardware alternate. We had an owner-preferred high school fire alarm alternate, a Glenmont fire alarm system replacement, middle school dust collection system replacement, Hammer Grill classroom casework replacement, and middle school auditorium flat area. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Those were alternates. because we weren't sure where our bids were going to come in, and if we incorporated them, that would have been $1.2 million that we could add to our overage if they were built into the base bid. All right? So we are recommending we accept alternate number one at $65,000 because we have to have all the same lock sets district-wide, okay? So that means that we were not able to accept $1.2 million worth of alternates that were in addition to the base bid. Okay. So I wanted to talk quickly about the proposal to accept the bids this evening is out for the Board of Education to consider. So I wanted to talk about what we're going to get back, if you will. In other words, if we ask them not to do a particular element, it's called a deduct change order because we already went to bid, okay? It's a industry standard in that, and it's a law, that you can't just say, never mind, we don't want to do that because then it wouldn't be fair to the second lowest bidder because they said, well, if we had bid that and knew that, we would have lowered our number or something along that line. So I wanted to make sure that folks understand what a deduct change order is and how we intend on closing that budget gap. So the process by which we come up with our budgets is at pre-referendum, the owner and architect, we establish our project elements, and we put a number to them, okay? And that's based on many, many factors. There's simple ones like price per square foot. There's also the how technical the job is. Again, when we raised the stage at the high school, that wasn't $100 per square foot. That was many bucks per square foot. So there's a lot of factors associated with that. And then we go into design development. We get approval and we say, hey, okay, yes, we agree we're going to spend $40.7 million on this project. These are the elements we're going to do. The architect gets to work and they start designing it, all right? And then we had a submission estimate. Here in Bethlehem, normally we would have a bid estimate just before we go to bid, but because of the process that we endured, I'll use the term endured, with State Education Department, we decided to do a SED submission estimate prior to sending our project. And that's when we found that we were over by $10 million, okay? So then we solicited our bids, the contractors bid, we received them, we vet and qualify them. And again, vetting and qualifying is making sure that they carried dollars for what they were supposed to do in the project and didn't carry dollars for things they weren't supposed to. So the process when we receive unfavorable bids are, option one on the other slide was reject everything and not do the project. That is not our recommendation. So if the bids received exceed the construction budget, reductions are required to be able to award the contracts. And we can't exceed our construction budget in the contracts, okay? So the construction manager requests cost reduction estimates of specific scope elements from the contractor. Not every single one, because they will not do that. They're not going to break out 200 elements and say, well, my bid was $12, because it's not that simple. If I'll use an example here, if we were going to rebuild that stage, it's not just one contractor doing that. You have an electrician, you have a general contractor, you have gym floor painting companies and subcontractors associated. So we asked them to give us numbers on some of these elements, okay? And my example here was the middle school auditorium, because that is one that we're gonna recommend that the board rebid in the fall. So we got those estimates. And again, it is an estimate. I want to highlight that. The district is not going to receive full value of a deduct change order, okay? Because there's many factors, several, which is why we won't get that is, contractor labor. So if we took out a large element and they planned on having 20 of their workers working for 6 months, there's a cost associated with that, because now what are they going to do with these folks? They assumed that we were going to use their folks. So now they got to find more work, or they got to take measures to keep them on the payroll. The other is that the contractor is most likely going to keep the profits that they had in there, the overhead and profit, that they didn't get for that work, okay? And if you research this, you'll find there's many other, and most of the time you can't get a true answer. The other thing that they have to do is buy out their subcontractors, okay? So we never get full value is the point. So with the auditorium, at pre-referendum, we estimated that the cost of the work that was designed at that time was about $2.1 million. Then at SED submission, we felt that with the economy factors and some of the design work, that it was going to cost us $2.7 million, right? So after we received bids, the general contractor was about $4.2 million higher than expected. So for the overall project, we asked them, hey, if we didn't do the auditorium and did it later, what would you give us back? And the general contractor said $725,000. The electrical said $500,000. I'll note that in one moment. The mechanical contractor said $247,000, and the controls contractor said $34,000, for a total of $1.5 million. All right. One may ask, well, geez, we thought it was going to cost 2.7, and we're over budget. Why did we only get 1.5 back? Well, the reason that it's such a small number is we were given a range, and that 500 even is the one I want to focus on, the 500,000 even from the electrical contractor. We, the district, have 30 days to award contracts per our contract, or per our bid. All right, we have spoken with all of our contractors, and they have agreed to at least give us until after this evening, okay, so that we can make decisions. They've been working with us. All right, so these estimates, again, it says post-bid cost reduction estimates by contractor. It is just that, an estimate. They gave us a range. We, the team, used the low end of the spectrum on this. That's why that number looks very low. All right, so the range could be 500,000 to $1 million, but I used the low end to be conservative, okay? I didn't want to come to the board and to the public and say, you know, oh yeah, we're gonna use the high end of the range and we're gonna expect that back and everything's great. We were not comfortable in doing that. So the expectation is that the deduct change order number is gonna go up. And I don't wanna say it has to, but it kinda does. Because the electrical is an easy one to pull out, all right? Because that is specific work. It's the audio and it's the lighting. Okay, it's not like they're running pipe everywhere and doing it. It's the equipment and everything. So those are single line items that are easily pulled out. So the expectation is, without question, that the electrical is going to go up. Okay. If the deduct change orders come in more favorable than expected, which we are expecting them to go up, we may be able to add an element or some of the elements back into the project. But tonight we're asking the board to approve those four elements to be removed. All right, so one would ask, why didn't we have them break out all 200 elements? And again, they will not do that. That is a lot of time and effort on their part, and they don't have a contract yet. So we spent a lot of time figuring this out. I use the term a slide puzzle. What dollar amount do we need to reduce, and how many elements would that take to do that? All right, so you saw that we could do 23 or we could do 4. And when we picked those 4, there was several factors associated with it. It wasn't just a dollar amount, it was fitting it into the schedule, overall impact, and again, did we, and I don't want to say design it right, we designed it to what we needed back in 19, but now program and things have changed. So that all played a factor in how we determined these 4 elements, okay? Okay, so our reduction solution summary to meet the $3.7 million was, we had miscellaneous reductions. I tried to come up with a really good word for that, but the point to that is there was no scope removal. In other words, these are, I'll use the term savings or reductions that we can do that does not remove any construction from the project. okay? So we reviewed our incidental budget, and we're able to reduce that by $411,000. All right, we value engineered additional items at a reduction of $479,000, and we had voluntary contractor deductions. And I had a question earlier about, geez, why would the contractor voluntarily give you back money? Okay, and the reason that they would do that is at the time of bid, an example of this would be when they went out to bid, they have subcontractors. And I'm going to use the general contractor as an example because he had the highest amount of voluntary deductions. He could not get a site work sub to give him a number in his time frame because everybody was so busy. So he carried a number. He said, well, I'm going to cover myself and I'm going to put X to do this site work as I see it on our drawings. Okay, once we went out to bid, our numbers came in high. He was able to get those numbers in the meantime and said, hey, yeah, I don't know what numbers they physically carried, but I carried $1 million. It came in at 700. I'm going to give you back to $300,000. Okay, that's considered a voluntary deduct. The other way a voluntary deduct would happen is if they carried something that they thought they should have and shouldn't. Okay, so they will voluntarily, without a change order, reduce their cost to us. An example of that is, oh geez, I thought I was responsible to do that portion of the site work when in fact the lighting installer was putting those footings in. So they realized that when the construction managers, and I'll use the term grilled them and vetted them and said, you know, did you carry this or didn't carry that? And we straightened that out. So that's what a voluntary deduct change order, or correction, voluntary contractor deduction is. So if you look at the things that we did that don't affect scope, we were able to reduce by $1.2 million. That budget gap of 3.7 now is reduced by 1.2. So our recommendation is to remove 4 larger scope elements at a cost estimated, again, cost reduction of $2.6 million. Those being the middle school auditorium. As you saw before, it was about $1.5 million. Schlingerland's kitchen and cafeteria at $770. Glenmont classroom finishes at $160, and high school main office at $175. If we were to do these reductions as recommended, we would reduce by $3.84 million. Okay, next slide, please. And this sums it up for you. If you add those together, our voluntary deducts, the estimated post-bid reductions, and our incidental budget reductions, it's that 3.84 minus the budget variance, it leaves $70,000 in our terms on the table, okay? And that's for, and that's a good number. If we were leaving $1 million there, we wouldn't be doing our jobs, okay, folks? But none of the elements are exactly $70,000. So we kind of left that there because we believe that's going to go up when we actually award a contract and get our deduct change orders. Next slide. So this evening, the recommendations and the request to the Board of Education from the project team is to approve the removal of the following 4 large project scope elements, which being the middle school auditorium, Schlingerland's kitchen and cafeteria, Glenmont classroom finishes, and the high school main office. That would be the first step. Next would be to approve the award of the contracts as issued to the Board of Education. And then approve the rebid of the middle school auditorium in the fall of '23 as a single project using capital reserve to augment the funding. Again, voter approval would be required. And approve the deferral of Schlingerland's kitchen and cafeteria, Glenmont classroom finishes, and the high school renovation, high school main office renovation to a future capital bond project. And again, I'll put the caveat, if we are more favorable, we may be able to add one of those back in. And that is my presentation this evening. May I answer any questions?
Turn my mic back on. I'm sure there are some questions. So, but I just want to restate what you just said at the end. So if, and thank you for the explanation about the deduct change orders, because that was something I was trying to figure out in terms of why the numbers didn't match up, but
Sure.
Now that makes sense. So if they come back more favorably than currently anticipated, then we might, for example, add back in the Glenmont classroom finishes.
Correct.
That would be the idea.
Right. And I just wanted to, that would be another recommendation to the board. I have some ideas because those 4 were chosen. We need to do the middle school auditorium. That's why we're recommending going back out to bid. Okay, we want to do that, we need to do that. It really affects program at the middle school, so that's how we would fund that. The other 2, Glenmont classrooms need a redesign, okay? Because when we got in deeper into the design and we started doing destructive testing, we found that the walls would not support what we designed for them. Okay, so I don't think I would recommend those, and we don't have enough time to fit it in this project, quite honestly. And the same with the Slingerland's cafeteria and kitchen. Doing those at the same time is very difficult logistically because we need to prep the food and we need to feed the children. Okay, unlike our last bond project, when we did Glenmont, we were able to move the serving line into the cafeteria, and it was only a stone's throw away from where the children were used to going and getting their food, and then they ate right in the cafeteria. And the high school, same thing with the design, you know, half now, half later. We feel that it would be more beneficial for the district and more cost-effective if we did it all at once in a future project. So I will let the cat out of the bag now. My recommendation would be due to Slingerland's kitchen. I would do that if we have the funds available. That way, when we do the future bond project, we don't run into the same logistical problem, right? And we also have some needs from food service to, part of that was to put a walk-in cooler and freezer at Slingerland's, and that space is desperately needed. So, you know, there's an example that the best recommendation I would make is to do the kitchen, meet the needs of the district, meet the needs of food service and the students, and then when we do it in the next one, we can still prep, the children can eat in the gymnasium that could become the cafeteria or in their classrooms. So there's an example of what we could do in the future by these recommendations.
Nick, could you just clarify the awarding of the contracts is that it's not a formal vote by the board tonight. It's an approval to move forward with that to develop the contracts that the board would then approve.
Yes,
Correct.
that is
Because
correct.
they have to have the contracts in place for the board to actually approve them.
So that we can give
Based
our
on the bids.
contractors a notice to proceed letter that, yes, you are getting this job, let's get the ball rolling. And then what we would present to the board, and we plan on doing this on May 17th board meeting, because we have to draw these contracts up fully, and it's gonna take a bit of time to get the deduct change order paperwork in order. Then we would present to the board at the May 17th, you would award the contracts, and then following that, if awarded, you would approve the deduct change orders. Okay, and that's a good question. One thing I want to make you aware of, when we do that, we would award the bids as they bid. So, for example, $13.9 million, okay, well, it actually is $13,665 because they had voluntary deducts, and we do have alternate number 1 added in. So it's $13,665,000. That's not what we're going to end up paying them because they're going to give us a whole bunch of money back in the next deduct change order. Does that make sense, folks? Because we can't do a deduct change order if we don't have an awarded contract. There's nothing to deduct it from. So it's really a paperwork. But so that's why we're not asking for anyone to sign a contract or anything this evening, because we have to have all that paperwork, and it's going to take a couple of weeks to be able to present it to the board so that it's crystal clear and the numbers match and we know exactly what we're getting back. That would also afford us the opportunity for the contractors to get away from the estimate and give us the real deduct change order number. That's when we hopefully will be able to present to the board that, yes, they came in much higher. If approved, we recommend adding X back into the project.
And can you, and this, if you'd like to defer to John, feel free, how much is in the capital reserve, just for anybody listening who might?
I would love to defer to John. I know that 2019 has about 1.7 million, but I don't know what else.
Presently, you have 7.9 million available between both the 2019 and 2022 capital reserve.
Okay. Thank you.
And knowing that, and having conversation, we didn't recommend putting these 4 projects out to bid. Notice we only recommend doing the auditorium. That in discussion with administration and the team, we don't want to eat up our entire capital reserve, okay? There may be a difference in opinions with some folks, but, you know, the cafeteria and the kitchen here at Slingerland's are functional, they're usable, et cetera, okay? Is it an emergency that we eat up our capital reserve to try to fit that in the fall? Our opinion is no, okay? And the same with the other 3. Really, I think the next highest priority would be that kitchen, okay? So that's why we didn't recommend putting all 4 out to bid in the fall. We don't want to chew up our capital reserve.
And just to be crystal clear about it, if we go out to do that, for the community to vote on that and use the capital reserve, we're using money we already have. There's not a tax impact to the community.
For the additional one, if you use capital reserve money, that's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Catherine, I think you had some questions.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm very perplexed about the alternates you spent a lot of time explaining them and I still don't quite grasp it. Could you just
Sure.
take it at the highest level? Like what is, help?
Okay, no
Thank you.
problem.
I'm sorry.
So when we have our drawings, we say, this is what we want you to build, okay? When we were doing our estimating, we kind of had an idea that we're going to be high. Okay, so typically what you can do is you could say, if our bids came in favorable, there would be you have an alternate portion of the work on the drawings. It's highlighted or flagged, and it says alternate number 1. Okay, alternate number 1, provide owner-preferred door hardware, okay? Correct, owners, us. So, but it's explicitly written, that's not part of base bid. They give us a separate number. They give us a base bid to do all the work, and then they give us a separate number for the alternate work. Does that make sense to you? And I can
Yeah.
give you more examples.
So I think so. I think if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying like this, to use the door hardware, for
Yes.
example, you're saying they're providing alternate pricing depending on what choices the district goes with, whether we approve our preference or whether they're suggesting or go with this other brand, or, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So using the door hardware,
Yeah, sorry.
they're going to base bid. They could bid a different manufacturer, okay? And it's going to come in, and I'm going to use a number, and it's not relevant, the number, it's just for explanation. If they were to use Slage, it's $30,000 to do this scope of work. Well, the owner is saying, we don't want Slage. We can't make you provide anything because it's public bid, okay? So we're asking, what would it cost us if you did provide us with best hardware versus Slage? So we said that is an alternate to the base bid. Okay, so we're asking them, how much is it going to cost us to get what we want, essentially?
Instead of what they're offering to provide.
Correct, because they can substitute as long as it is an or equal, okay?
And, may I continue on? So, the proposal that you all are recommending includes, on this pie chart slide, it said includes alternates that were not accepted?
Not included. So they would be considered a reduction as well. That's why there's 5 alternates that we can't accept because they cost $1.2 million more.
I see.
Okay, so we are recommending we accept alternate 1 so that we do get our door hardware so that it matches district-wide.
Oh, I see, and you're just saying, but not the other alternates?
Not
that
the other
they
5.
provided.
There were
Thank
6
you.
in total. And when I say can't, you could,
Right,
but then
right.
we'd have to reduce something else, and that kind of wouldn't look right because base bid is the work that we wanted. We chose these as alternates because when they were estimated, we realized, geez, the middle school dust collection system was $600,000 once it was estimated out and fully. Because what we learned was that the New York State code changed. Okay, and that's what I don't want to say tripped us up, but that's what changed. I was like, well, why can't we just, all we got to do is take this one out and put this one in. That changed in 2021 New York State Fire Code and Building Code.
Got it.
So Drew will, remember, I know. No, but I mean, he remembers me jumping up and down like this is not good.
Right.
Because we really wanted to do that dust collection system, but when priced out, it was $600,000. So we made that an alternate, because we knew that we had to, instead of reducing the 69 elements, okay, we came up with 6 more that we really wanted to do. If bids came in favorable, all we would ask that the board to do would be to accept that alternate. Okay, unfortunately, the bids did not come in our favor. So those items are considered part of the reduction elements and go on to the next capital project scope elements.
Thank you for walking me through it. I'll take you up over
Does-
coffee on that offer, but maybe for the PIG students' sake, we won't do it tonight now. But the dust collection codes.
Oh,
I'll back up.
yeah, I'm,
Clear, the owner preferred alternate is not terribly common. We don't do it a whole lot because it's a way to get around, not get around, but to get what the district wants legitimately when they want one thing. And our other alternates weren't built that way. They were just straight alternates.
Right.
Either I'm going to do the dust collection or I'm not.
Right.
Give me a price to do it or to not.
Right.
So that's a more straight alternate. You circle it, all pricing for this, put it on a different line item, report it differently on your bid. The door hardware is a little bit different where give me the upgrade price
right.
from your base bid to give me what the district wants. Okay? So it's a little bit different in that way, but the analogy is the same.
Yep.
And we do this as frankly, a hedge against the world. Like, even in good climates, we can't always know how our bids are going to come in.
Right.
And those alternates can give us the flexibility to, if we get good bids, we can do more of these things. But if we don't get good bids, we don't have to do these things. We're unfortunately relying a lot on the other side of that scenario. But
Right.
that's the intention of creating alternates and including new bids.
Right, and then in the future, if we wanted to do that, the board could pass a resolution to have a single source, I call it. For example, in places I worked before, the board could pass a resolution saying that Technical Building Services is our building automation system supplier. That way, if we bid a job, we don't get Honeywell and Technical Building, Train Tracer, Carrier, CCM, now we don't want 5 different building automation systems that can't talk to each other because they don't have open protocol. So fortunately, we haven't run into that situation here at Bethlehem, but you could do that with locks, you could do it with fire alarm, you could do it with our building automation down the road if we feel that the board is not comfortable with owner-preferred alternates.
Meredith, did you have a question?
Just quickly, I just wanted to make sure if we take out specifically Slingerland's, the work on Slingerland's kitchen and Glenmont classroom finishes, are those schools still getting work done, or are we not doing any work on those schools?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll use Slingerland's because we're here. So Slingerland's is getting a substantial amount of work. I talk logistics. We are doing the basement classrooms, all of them. So the bulk of that down there is music and art, and there's OTPT downstairs. Okay, they need more space, and they need fresh 2020 space, okay? Ceilings are low, lighting is awful, acoustics are terrible, and they don't have what they need, okay? So they're getting that, but we have a domino effect here at Slingerland's. To do what we have to do downstairs, we have to do work upstairs, okay? So on the stage in the cafeteria, there's that large wall with the beautiful tile on it. Behind that is all of our one-on-one spaces for the students, and we have to renovate that area. So now we're working in the cafeteria, the kitchen, on the stage, and the old, I call it the old faculty room, the existing faculty space across. We're kind of doing a slide puzzle so that we can accommodate the rebuilding of the spaces downstairs. So Slingerland's is also getting, oh my goodness, a pavilion outside. The bulk of it, though, is the program work here. We're not cutting any of the program. I guess you could consider food service part of the program, but we can still prep and feed our kids here. And I apologize, I'm having a blank.
Yeah, I don't
but
need The specifics, I just want to make sure that it was an equitable
You
decision.
just took the words out of my mouth. I spent a lot of time making sure that we were equitable across the district. I'm not sure, I wrote an email to the superintendent because there were some questions, and I had it all laid out that, that's why I have it actually in my brain, that looking at the equity across the district, Slingerland's last bond in 2016 had, some minor internal but major external renovations done to the building. All right, Glenmont, same thing, their entire exterior with some interior. They had their whole kitchen done and things like that. So we are still going to do all the work as laid out to the public and to the Board of Education, with the exception of those 4 classrooms. Okay, so that would be the only scope cut. We're still doing the floors, we're still doing the pit area, still doing the boilers, still doing the air handling equipment, and everything but that one element. All right, fortunately or unfortunately, Eagle and Ellesmere really didn't have anything that we could reduce. Okay, there's 2 things really happening at Eagle. One is our storm outfall, and that's substantial. I think we talked about that once, where we have storm water that goes down the ravine, and the ravine is literally sloughing off or falling down. We're having a landslide. So that has to be repaired. We can't not do that, or we're gonna lose our field. Okay, and the same with their windows. There's some window issues. All right, Ellesmere had a ton of work done last bond. Okay, the only real thing they're getting in this bond go-around is a pavilion and some playground elements. Really can't cut those. That's program, that's students, that affects the kids. All right, and then as we go down the list, Glenmont would lose 1 element, and that's those 4 classrooms, because they really need to be looked at. We have some structural issues. It's not as simple as going in and taking the stuff off the walls and putting it back. We found that late in the game when we were doing destructive testing for HAZ. And then here at Slingerland's, the bulk is program-oriented, so we wouldn't be losing that. They're also getting a playground pavilion, and, our piping. Our piping that we stopped, our classrooms, our elementary wing all have sinks and bathrooms, and we have had a rash of problems with the piping that's down in the crawl spaces. So we prepped it last bond project, and we need to make the repairs this bond project.
And just to clarify, there's not a safety issue with the Glenmont classrooms that you're saying?
No.
Okay.
In speaking with the principal, it's more of, it's aesthetic, okay? But they are due for a refresh. We still have the old metal blinds, the ceilings are unfinished. When I mean by unfinished, they're exposed ceilings. They're painted, they're in good repair. But the walls themselves have this, it looks like vinyl as a coating, which is very odd. It's not wallpaper, it's a vinyl material. We presume, and then when we went and tested it, that, okay, we're gonna take that vinyl off and put new over top of it. Well, that vinyl behind it is just plaster. So we can't just do that, okay? So there's no safety aspect associated with any of these. The only concern with any of those 4 elements is the kitchen here at Slingerland's with food service. The expectation was we were gonna have that additional freezer space. And if the board recalls, during the pandemic, we rented a 40-foot freezer because of the supply chain issues. We had to buy ahead, and we had no place to store it. That freezer's since been sent back, and hopefully we don't get into another situation like that, but that would allow our food service director to store more food that we could send out. And this is the largest elementary school, so we really wanted to get that kitchen done.
Okay, thank you.
Willow, did you have a question?
I did. I had 2 quick ones that relate to one another. I'm just trying to understand whether the option you're recommending and the other option are just a product of math, or whether they reflect the prioritization system that went in. Like the other option that I understand is not the one you're recommending with the 23 items. Are those 23 low priority items, or is it just 23 items that happen to add up to the amount that you were looking to reduce?
No, those were the 23 that we could cut to make that dollar amount, okay? And some of them are substantial and would cut deeply, okay? Off the top of my head, Glenmont's boiler systems, they're 25 years old.
Yep, okay, so it was math.
Right, well, it's math and, how do I say this? We couldn't ask them to give us a line item breakout. We could only give them a select few. So looking at all those, to make that same dollar amount, based on the gap, we would have to cut 23 to equal those 4. So it is math, all right? And those 4, though, were chosen for I kind of already talked about it. I don't want to be redundant, but, you know, the logistical aspect, the dollar amount. And we weighed some of those 23. You know, the boilers were 600,000, let's say. Okay, well, we don't want to cut that because it's too much. So, you know, it kind of was that slide puzzle that fit the budget gap.
Okay. And then, Jody, I guess I'm just looking for you to tell me that this recommendation for these 4 items aligns with sort of the district review of the priorities, and this
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah, so the principals and other people who have been involved in this, I think all support this. I mean, obviously, everyone would have loved to see all of these things, including the elements we already reduced in the fall. But I think they make sense. Some of this, to Nick's point, is a timing issue that some of these just couldn't be done within the time frame that we are trying to get the project done. I think the middle school auditorium, there are still some design elements that came up during the development, that the floor issue was one of them that was not initially discussed. So it gives us more time to build that into the project and still ultimately get that project done.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the middle school auditorium is super high up there.
Right.
Have we had a capital reserve project rejected by the voters in anyone's recent memory?
And we've never done it, so the capital reserve has always been used to offset a larger bond. So we haven't actually had a vote just to use capital reserve to fund a project, but in speaking with some of other superintendents in the area, they have done that recently with bond projects because of the same issues that we're experiencing, that they haven't had enough money to finish some of the projects, so they've gone out to get a vote using capital reserve funds to finish certain projects that they deemed a priority.
I'm sorry, I know I said I only had 2 questions. That would go on the May ballot, or that would be a fall
That would have to be.
standalone?
Yeah, that would have to be probably a fall.
All right, I'm
stand-
done.
Yep.
And if I may, I'd just like to let you know, so one of the alternates was that flat spot in the auditorium that came up late in the design. The value that the general contractor bid was $204,000 to do that little flat spot. All right, and that's why this came up. Does it make sense to spend $204,000 to put a flat spot that truly, in speaking with the stakeholders, is not 100% what they desire? That was a makeshift, quick, well, we could do this. Let's see how much it costs. That's $200,000 that in the future, what we want to do is remove the floor in its entirety, design it to the way that, that meets the needs of the stakeholders. Whether we do the entire floor or do a flat spot, all of the auditorium chairs get replaced. So does it make sense now to pull all those chairs out, make a flat spot for $200,000 plus the flat spots for our ADA locations, put all these brand new chairs on, and then say, hey, you know, well, we'll push that to another project? To me, that didn't make sense. So we kind of said, let's do it not right because what we're designing is right, but let's meet the needs of the stakeholders. Because we have, you know, a program in there, and we also have theater and music. So, you know, the stakeholders came together and determined that that's what the needs were. So we tried to accommodate, and it's extremely expensive to put that flat spot in there when in the future we can do it all at once.
Good. If we go out in the fall to use the capital reserve to do the middle school auditorium, do we need to get any kind of new SED approval, any new bids, I'm just thinking of anything else that's gonna shut this down, like slow this
Drew
down?
answered that quickly.
The nice thing is that SED approved the entire project, including the 69 elements that we removed in the fall. Because as you remember, we realized our budget situation, as we were submitting to SED, we did not have time to So every last bit of this project, whatever it costs, is approved at SED. So as long as our scope doesn't stray from that, and say, oh, well, we're doing the auditorium in the middle school, why don't we just go over and do the gym? I know we just did the last project. But if our scope creeps in that direction onto something that's totally unidentified before, we run into trouble and we might need to resubmit. But the fact that anything we'd be looking to do again, or to bring back into the project, either a rebid in the fall or in, opportunistically when our DDOT change orders come back, well, all that's already at the state, it's already all fully approved at the state by them. So there's no more, SED, issue there with approval.
Okay. And hypothetically, I'm not going to hold you to it, but would you have an idea of what the timing would look like? Would we, start work in, say, February or end of January? And I'm not sure how long it would
For
take.
the auditorium.
For the auditorium.
If we did a vote in the fall, let's say October, it was approved, the project's already approved, we could potentially start sometime during the year, correct?
Yes.
Because that's kind of, you can keep that separate from the middle
Okay.
school, so it's not disruptive, which could be a positive, because the auditorium then wouldn't be out of use for an entire year. It could be half a year next year and half a year the following year, which would still allow some use during both of those times.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing is, we did this, if you recall, when we did the middle school pool. Kind of the same thing happened. The middle school pool was designed, ready to go, and by the time we started doing construction, we noticed that we had some serious structural issues. Okay, so then we said, wait, let's not pull the trigger on this, let's wait, redesign it, then we kept it in the project, but we put it out as a separate package. Okay, and so that meant that we bid it separately once we knew exactly what we needed to do. And we had an electrician, we had the GC, the plumber, et cetera, and the mechanical, all one little mini package under the umbrella of the 2016 capital project. So this will be very similar. And I've heard zero complaints about our beautiful pool facility over at the middle school. So it actually worked out much, much better for us.
Catherine, did you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, one jumped to mind that had come in that I forgot to raise earlier, which was just, excuse me, I'm assuming it's implicit that we are allowed to accept bids when we only have a single bidder. I got in a question because folks were under the impression that as a municipality or something, we had to have more than one bidder, then, no, okay, great.
If it's a public bid process and you only get one bidder,
That's
it's
okay.
still a public bid process.
Perfect, I just,
Don't get me wrong, we'd love to get through.
yeah, no, I just wanted, that was I assumed that was implicit, I just wanted to make it explicit. So thank you. And then, Jody, you were talking about going out to vote, would we just do that as part of the November election? Like when, would we?
We haven't done it aligned with the general election.
Okay.
We've typically done it just totally separate.
Okay.
Part of the issue would be getting voting machines.
Yeah, right.
So we
Right.
would probably not do that. I would think maybe October.
Okay.
Or trying to not align with that, so where it's a disruption or we have trouble getting the voting machines.
No, I just was wondering if there was a way to piggyback so that we didn't have the cost of running our own
Yeah, that would be great.
referendum
but,
or,
yeah,
additional. Okay,
That doesn't usually work.
that's not how it goes.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Christine, I think.
Yeah, I
you
have
question.
a couple questions. So out of our large projects, and I don't remember this, how many do we have that are over like $1 million? Is it, I know there's the auditorium, the cafeteria, the turf field. What do we have, what large, because we're cutting those 4 projects, but they're not all over $1 million, there's only 2 over $1 million. How many, is it like 50%? I just wasn't sure how many large projects we had that are running.
I'm sorry,
I couldn't pull it up, I apologize, I couldn't find it.
If I may, because I don't have the values in my
Okay.
head, but I do have the same document that you have, and if I can scan it real quickly.
Oh, yeah, they're,
And so you're looking for items.
I was just wondering how many
over
large
$1 million?
projects we had that were like over $1 million.
Okay, I'm looking. Right, yeah. no,
You don't have to count, I mean, I was just,
No,
if you
I'm
knew
almost
it,
there.
it was fine.
That are over $1 million amount wise?
Yeah,
total?
yeah.
Oh.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because when, money goes through my head, and I'm thinking about where you said the reductions, they aren't dollar for dollar. And it seems like maybe a little bit of that might go into like the contingency that we're cutting, because we're not getting dollar for dollar. That might still be kind of contingency money if we can't offset it, you know, take the offset of, let's say we put out to SED 2.7 for the auditorium, but we're only getting a 1.5 credit, that leaves 1.2. So when we add those projects that we're not getting dollar for dollar, we're looking at like probably like 2.5 million in there. So one, I'm trying to figure out where that's going. And the other question I had is, do we think that when we go out to bid again on like the auditorium or the cafeteria, that costs are gonna go up from where we got the bids now? Because I thought that's what you said,
Well,
which,
that's a risk we are going to have to take. However, the goal is, right now, we can only get one bid for the general contractor, which is the bulk of the work for the auditorium. The hope is, or the theory is, that we are going to be able to package this, and when we go out, it's a known project. It's not like it's a 2-year project, as Jody said. It's a more condensed, quick project. We know we're going to employ our employees from here to here, and it's more attractive to more contractors. So we should get more bids, which should make it more competitive.
but do we think those dollars, so we had 2.7 as part of this package for SED. Do we think with the changes and maybe the costs of either labor or materials going up, we're looking at over a 3-point-something project for the auditorium? Is that one of the reasons we're deferring it? Because we think those projects are gonna be well above where we're currently at?
I wouldn't use the word well above. I think a fair statement would be above, most likely. We're hoping that this is peaking and we're gonna go back down in the other direction. But it seems like when roofing material was our hard nut to crack, and now it's not roofing, it's HVAC. And then steel did that. So it's unknown right now in today's economy. But what we do know is we should get more competitive bids.
So with the concern of losing the dollars and the offset on the credit or the deductions, my other question is, and I'm not gonna be a popular person for saying this out loud, if you took the turf field, which is approximately, what, 5 million? And postpone that because those costs are relatively stable, and they came in at bid, and we know they're gonna stay probably relatively the same, would it make sense to defer that just till the fall, and then just defer it to the following summer? And then you can do those projects that have been waiting for a while to be done. And I'm certainly not saying do not do a turf field, so I want to be very clear here.
No, but, you know.
It just, the dollar for dollar seems, we'll get more money.
But the amount of program, by excluding that would affect our student athletes and student body, PE, I wouldn't make that recommendation. Me
Even
personally.
with like the Slingerland's kitchen serving these students in the auditorium at the middle school, I actually think it would serve more students.
Than the turf.
Yeah, if you took the number of students here and the number of students at the middle school for the auditorium, that would be more than the students that use the turf field at the high school. For a year, it's only a year, we're only talking a year. It just seems to me that we would lose less dollars because we already have a bid for that. We have them locked into the costs, and the turf is more stable in costs. That it would make sense to defer one project versus all of these projects. That's just, I'm just throwing it out there, that's all.
And again,
For discussion with the board.
you know, it hit me, you can see my wheels are spinning, I'm thinking, so you had a lot right there. I don't wanna say it's not that simple, okay? Because there are pros and cons to that. Yes, we have our bid now, and then, they won't hold that bid till fall. So everything could go up or down or whatever, so there's the same risk. The beauty of using the co-op is we get the best price, we get it now, we should take advantage of that. All right, that's an opinion, again, and that's why I would recommend proceeding with that. But the amount of program that affects, I think, again, I don't wanna look argumentative, but I think it's play on these turf fields. So we have to go and rent space to practice on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we've just spent like so many board meetings talking about turf, I just don't think we need to relitigate the reasons for the turf. I think and that's not any disrespect to you, I just think we agree with you, right?
Yep,
We made
yep,
the decision to
agree.
support the turf.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure,
Thank you.
I understood, okay. So, back to your first question, Ms. Beck. So the roofs at the middle school are 1.8 million. The Hammond Grill roof is over $1 million. The LMC at the middle school is over, just about at $1 million, and the tennis courts were just under $1 million. So, and then we have, the fire alarm replacement at the high school. So those were the items that were over $1 million.
Okay. I was just throwing out the costs and the
Okay.
stability of turf.
Understood.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, we don't love that we're getting back pennies on the dollar when we do these deduct change orders. But unfortunately, that's just the way it is. You're not gonna get back that, you're just not gonna get back all your value. Now, and we talked about it a lot, and it hurts, right? We don't love doing it, but it was the path forward, and I think specifically with the auditorium, it does give us a chance. I'll use the word that Nick didn't use, because you were right, because I think there was some breaking information there. I think there's a design process there that needs to be more fully vetted out now that we know, frankly, the true priorities in space. But I see that as an opportunity. But whatever we rebid, there's going to be a risk with escalation and with the timing of that bid. That's sort of the unavoidable part of rebidding it.
I would just want to add on to that. Again, these are the low end of the spectrum of the credits. We are expecting them to go up. So I looked at that, 2.7 to 1.5 and change coming back. That immediately, I was like, my eyes, I was like, that's not good. And then when we spoke to the team, we used low ranking because we didn't want to bring that to the board and say that we had too much or expected too much and then say, oh, geez, we need to come back to you and say we were off by, $200,000. So it's expected to go up. So realistically, that 1.5 is going to be, I'll speculate, 1.9 or 2.1. We don't know. But hopefully we'll find out here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. I don't think there are any other questions at this point.
So I think Nick needs to know if this is the direction the board is comfortable moving toward, because he has
Yeah.
to follow up with the bidders.
I think so, unless anybody disagrees. I'm disappointed by the delay. I think you are also. I think the auditorium project in particular is really important. And I do appreciate that we want to make sure we're doing it the right way. And I hope in terms of the timing and all of that we are also working with the stakeholders at the middle school and our music faculty to, make sure that we are doing it right and accomplishing what we want to do. Any other thoughts? So, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Our second presentation tonight is on English as a new language. So I invite our presenters to come up.
All right, so good evening, everyone. And first of all, I just want to start off by introducing myself. I'm Andy Baker. I'm the principal here at Slenderlands Elementary. I want to thank the Board of Education for coming to have your meeting this evening here at Slenderlands, so welcome. And also with me, I'll let my colleague introduce himself right here. some staff members from our building that are here tonight. We've got some of our ENL teachers, Mrs. Lewis, Ms. Beers, Ms. McCabe, as well as several other members of our staff and classroom teachers. So thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to sort of tag team with this presentation and talk about our English as a New Language program, which is housed here there are 3 buildings in the district that house this program, Glenmont, Eagle, and here at Slingerlands Elementary. We also are very proud of the work that we do every day, leading students on their path towards the improvement in their English proficiency, as we have students that come from numerous countries, numerous places, and with various diverse backgrounds, and we meet them where they are, and we bring them along that continuum to enhance their English proficiency, and it's quite very rewarding work. So, with that, next slide, please. Is this my slide? I believe it is. This is a loosely rehearsed presentation. So our department, of course, under the guidance of the New York State Commissioners Regulation Part 154, governs the provision of these ENL services to students in our districts across New York State. And I'll let Senor Aviles talk a little more about that.
Very kind. Thank you very much. Commissioner's Regulation Part 154 is what governs our services, and it's pretty clear. It protects the rights and the needs of our students when they come as English learners to our district or to any other district in New York State. It protects the rights of the families also, and it informs them about what actions they can take when they are looking out for their children or for the services that we offer. The 4 links that are there are generally the links that I share with the families when they come to our district. I walk them through the orientation video, the Bill of Rights, and the parent guide. And I browse the next generation standards, so that's not my area too much, but I still talk to them about it. These documents are available right now, I think, in about 23 languages from New York State. So we're very happy that they take on that. But whenever we need to talk to families that have limited time with the English language, we hire interpreters, of course, to be able to reach them. You can go to the next slide, which is data. We love it. This is a breakdown of our student population in our schools. We have 22 students at Eagle. We don't have any students currently at Ellesmere. We would love to. We have 18 students at Glenmont. We have 1 student at Hammerville, and we will talk a little bit more about that when we look at the other slides. And we have 28 students in Slingerlands. And that brings up the total number of elementary school students to 69 currently. And then there are 14 and 15 in the secondary level and in the middle school and high school, respectively. And that puts us at 29 there, which is a total of 98. This is a high number for Bethlehem. When I started here a few years ago, number was significantly lower. The number has changed because of the pandemic. We received students from other districts. We were the district that was open. We were the district that was still functioning for these families. So yeah, a lot of them moved, and we were very happy to receive them. You can see the percentage that each one of those numbers is in terms of the ENL population. So 15% of our students are in the high school, 14% in the middle school, 22 at Eagle, 18 at Glenmont, and 28 at Slingerlands. And these numbers actually reflect, the elementary school numbers especially, reflect the sizes of our schools. I want to thank Dr. Hurst because he helps us since we cannot put our students in their home school all the time, if they're from Ellesmere or Hammerville especially. We have been able to be very strategic. And if you notice, 28, 22, and 18 for those 3 schools correspond to the sizes of the schools. So we try to keep it that. Next slide, please. So here's a more specific breakdown of those numbers. Notice that even though district-wide, we are right now, our students make up about 2.5% of the population, the total population. It's very different when we look at the elementary and secondary levels. The elementary, if you notice, Eagle, Glenmont, and Slingerlands are basically at 5, Slingerlands are pretty much at 6%. So that makes a big difference. It's not 2.5% of the population in these schools, it's actually way higher. So their presence has an impact in the classrooms. Their presence enriches the experiences that the other students have because they, I mean, you saw them. They are magnificent. They just have something special to say all the time. I was about to run here and hug each one of them, but that wouldn't have looked good on YouTube. That's basically the breakdown of our population. And again, since our teachers are here, they do a magnificent job finding how to meet the needs of these students, which are quite challenging, as we will see on what each level represents. They do quite a great job trying to fit their services in their schedules. It's a challenge, especially now with 99 students, because we just got one yesterday. But, with this number of students and the staffing having been, I know that and I want to thank you, of course, during the pandemic we were able to increase the FTE, but even with that, the teachers can attest to how challenging it is every day. We get students, it's a transient population, we get them tomorrow, and our classrooms are already set. So all of a sudden, one more student in the classroom creates a big impact. I mean, makes a big difference. Next slide, I think, is the levels. Yeah, I got this, Mr. Baker. In New York State, there are 5 levels, and this is actually one of the modifications that the Commissioner's regulations were able to bring when they were approved. The breakdown of the 5 levels is according to the units of study that the students are expected to receive from an E&L specialist, from someone who understands how to work with their needs. Students that are at the entering or emerging level, and by the way, these levels come when we receive a student that is a candidate to be an E&L student, the teachers screen the student. They do a quick interview with the family present so that the family can be part of it, right? They interview the student, if the teacher determines that the student has a need to develop proficiency in the English language in order to be successful in our classrooms, then they recommend that we do further screening, which is a state standardized test. It's the NICETEL. That test, the outcome of that test is one of these 5 levels. If the students score commanding in that test, by the way, then they are not considered E&L students because they are proficient in the language. Otherwise, they become part of our roster, and then these 5 levels are the same ones that are that come out of the NICESLAT, which is the test that all E&L students take every year. The first 2 levels, entering and emerging, require 2 units of study every week of support for the students, which equals to 360 minutes. We divide them in a way that I don't like. It's 72 minutes a day. 72 minutes a day is not 2 periods. It's somewhat 2 periods. So it's, again, quite challenging to work around it because the students have specials, the students have services, and the students have things that make it quite difficult. Transitioning and expanding students, which are the next 2 levels, are expected to receive support for 1 unit of study, which is 180 minutes a week, and that one is 36 minutes. So yeah, we usually just try to meet it the best way we can. And the commanding students, once a student, so if the commanding score comes from the NICETEL, the student is not in our roster. If the commanding score comes from the NICESLAT, which is the test that they take every year, then the student is determined to be proficient and remains in our roster with reduced support for 2 years. We sometimes look at them and say, yeah, you're commanding, but I'm gonna look at you at third year. We don't give them services, but we still talk to the teachers who have them in the classrooms to make sure that they're doing well. And these commanding students, there are 2 years, like I said, that they remain with us. After those 2 years, they go into the classrooms with the expectation that they will be successful. Good? I think I covered it. I think I have this one too. This is simply a breakdown of our population by level. And this is important, not only district-wide, but especially when it comes to the schools. 10 entering students and 10 emerging students, 19 transitioning, 25 expanding, and 34 commanding. And notice that the 34 is the highest number there, right? But if you think about it in terms of how many units of study the students receive, then truly the transitioning and expanding number is the highest number, because that group receives 180 minutes, just, both groups receive the same level of service. The 34 students don't take the nicest slot. So technically we have 64 students that will take the nicest slot this year, and we will be accountable for their scores. The other 34, of course, they take the ELA test and other assessments, but not the nicest slot anymore. Now, I do want to point out to one aspect. I know Eagle and Glenmont have 50% of their students at a commanding level. Those students have been with us for a few years. There are basically, I don't remember how many are recent arrivals at Eagle, which definitely has more than Glenmont, but it's not more than 4 that have arrived recently. So they have a higher number of commanding students. Slingerlands, on the other hand, has a lot of the recent arrivals. And the commanding percentage there, if I'm not mistaken, is 14%, because the students haven't been with us for a long time. So that makes a big difference when you schedule. If you have 50% of your students needing 0.5 units of study, it's 18 minutes a day. That's not much. If you have 86% of your students not at the commanding level, and you're talking about a lot of students needing 72 minutes today and 36 minutes today. That is the biggest challenge for the schedule. So Ms. Autumn and Ms. Lewis, thank you very much for working around it. You're very kind. I think you're coming along. All right, you go with this one?
And of course it makes sense if you think about that data on the last slide, it's district-wide, so you're going to see a larger percentage of students who are commanding, because it's going to reflect the students who are older, who have been along their path of proficiency longer, or maybe, came to us at a level where they were more proficient in English than younger students coming in. So the data makes sense when you think about it that way. In terms of, so the challenge is, how do we deliver these minutes, these required minutes of instruction to these students, many of which also are multiply service students who also receive other interventions, and therein lies the challenge. And so there's different ways that we deliver that instruction. Mainly it's 2 different ways. It's going to be a standalone model where students are going to work in a small group setting with other ENL students, what you might call like a pull-out setting, where they're working with that ENL instructor with their class by grade level. ENL instructors can work with contiguous grade levels next to each other, but they would go by a level. It would go by their proficiency level from the nicest slot, and not just because you wouldn't have students working together who were 3 proficiency levels apart. They would have to be the same level and maybe contiguous grades. Co-teaching is very popular in our school at Slingerlands. I can speak to that. We have our instructors push in and teach directly in the classroom with the classroom teacher, and that model really allows for an integration of the services that are provided, working directly with the students in delivering the instruction and core curriculum that the teacher is providing, to provide that support, and to allow the students to be part of the fabric of the class, and students can learn from each other, not just English, but also much about their cultures. So there's a real benefit to having that integrated co-teaching model in the classroom as well. Next slide, please. So this slide shows, basically it shows the New York State versus Bethlehem percentage of L's across the state and across Bethlehem. And you can sort of compare visually very quickly by seeing what our top languages are at Bethlehem and what the state's top languages are. And of course, maybe not a big surprise that Spanish is the largest percentage of L's across the state. However, here at Bethlehem, Turkish is our largest number. We have a very large Turkish population. There is a support network in the community where families can gather and can have resources and supports among each other in the community. So it's an attractive area for members of that community. So our linguistic diversity is representative of our students' cultural heritage. And we have, as you can see going down, Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, and as you go down the list, you can see how those languages play out in Bethlehem as compared to the rest of the state. Next slide. So with this, I think this is yours.
Yeah, so it's challenging to communicate with families and make sure that they receive all the information that they need to be successful without at 3 a.m. waking up and thinking, oh my gosh, that thing is tomorrow and I don't know if people know. We try to sporadically, especially during periods of break, we use this company called Lexikey to hire interpreters and communicate with the families. And they have a service where they call the homes of the families that speak other languages, and they use an interpreter. And we find out great information because when people are talking to someone who is from their culture and understands their language in a different way, they become more candid and they can be more expressive in ways that sometimes they don't talk to us. Random things. We have found that people need to go to a dentist and don't even know how to. So little things like that make our families more successful. And then also help us communicate information that has been sent to the home, but probably they didn't pay attention the same way because it wasn't in their language or for whichever reason. We also hold in-person meetings frequently, as much as we can, especially the teachers do. We have an ENL newsletter that is sent to the families and can be translated into whichever language they need, pretty much. I think there's like 140 languages there. And our website can be also easily translated for the languages that we have that are most common. So I think that our families are able to receive the information as effective as we can. Now with the new programs that we are considering engaging with, yes, this will be much more effective. Parent Square does a much better job with that. So we're looking forward to making it easier, not just for the ENL. We as the ENL specialists, we know how to communicate with them, but we want the whole district, we want the entire village to be able to just click on something and know that the other end will receive it in a language that they understand. So more automated. I think we can move. And now we talk about our schools. And if I'm not mistaken, it's Eagle, Glenmont, Hammerville, Swingler, so I start. Yes. These are some slides with some pictures of our students and our families, because in some there may be some families, in action in their schools. The first one is from Eagle Elementary. They have the second largest group in our district. Miss Cherry and Miss Beers work with the 22 ENL students there, 23 now. They make up 5% of the population and 32% of the students are at commanding level. Not 50 like I said.
Okay, so Glenmont Elementary is home to the largest, exceptional group, twice exceptional group? Not sure what that means. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go to the first bullet. We are the instructor that works at that building is Ms. LaJudas, works with 18 ENL students. 5% of the student population are comprised of ELLs there, and 50% of the students at the commanding level.
So it was Glenmont at 50% and Slingerlands. Twice exceptional, just for the clarification, is students that probably have an IEP and are also English language learners. So they receive multiple services. Hammergrell. So Hammergrell is a school that, I mean, during the pandemic, we had like 8 students there. That felt awesome. But we usually have 1 or 2 students only. There are special programs at Hammergrell, again, for our twice exceptional friends. Miss McCabe currently goes there and helps us with our very important friend. It's only 1% of the student population. It's only 1 student, and we didn't want to separate him from his sibling. And they have an exceptional program for twice exceptional learners. I think next year we are going to have more students there.
Okay, and of course here at Slingerlands, that's home to our largest ENL group in the district. Our instructors, Ms. Lewis and Ms. Bierce, work with 28 Ls, 6% of our student population in the building, and 14% of the students at the commanding level. And of course, as Mr. Aviles alluded to, the students who presented tonight to you here tonight were members of our ENL population in our school. So we're very, very proud because we feel like we're very lucky to have the population where we can learn from them and they can learn from others, and we can just celebrate the diversity that we have in our school when it comes to our Ls. And as you can see, they are quite something. So
They are just like that in the classroom every day as well. Oh no, the middle school picture. So here's the story. The students are not gonna like it. Miss McCabe, I am so sorry. I do not know what happened. The collage is on Canva. The students actually were very kind with helping us with the pictures. I apologize very much. As soon as I finish and I go back there, look at my wife making fun of me. As soon as I'm back there, as soon as I go back there, that picture will go in. I am so sorry. There are 14 ENL students there. They make 1.5 of the student population and 50% at the commanding level. This is very different than when I started. 25 students carried Miss McCabe. I was looking today, there were 25 students in the middle school when I got here. Our students do that well. They leave us quickly. But we hope that number goes up again because it's quite low.
all right, so just to finish out, rounding out our schools, BCHS home to the 9th through 12th grade ENL students in the district. Ms. Devanzo, working with 15, represent 1% of the population and 47% of the students at the commanding level at the high school. And I believe that is it. So with that, a little after 9. So
I was going to say, if we can take a short break before we have some, there are probably a few questions for you guys, but that way you can find the picture, but we could let our PIG students come up and sign out and head out. Okay. I think there's a sheet over there, and I think one over there. There's one over there if you guys want to use that one.
She's gonna be a flip.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, so I guess, so we just need to, we'll approve that number 4, and then, but that's just like approving the warrant. Right. Right. Because that's it.
Thank you. Thanks for all your work on it. The fact that you can take a number from like memory and know it's 13.66 tells me that that's all you were doing.
It's impressive. That's a lot of numbers.
Appreciated the explanation of like what the change, because I was sitting there, I was like, I just don't understand.
I called him on Monday and I'm like, I don't know.
So I just, that,
I'm a pessimist by trade.
you wanna, you know,
My resting face is an upside down smile. I can't help it. I know in my interview when I said that to Jody, I just thought that was right. I'm like, well,
something fell down. I'm gonna just.
Oh, the whole table skirt fell off.
so, you know, it's very optimistic, really, but I'm a pessimist by nature because anything can go wrong.
Yeah, and it does. With
So,
this stuff.
but it tests my metal. We have been really deep in, spent a lot of time trying to figure out. In the meantime, I think it makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
Thanks,
Thank you
Nick.
very much.
Thanks, Nick. Have a good night.
I just, did it sound rude? I didn't mean it to. I just couldn't. I couldn't. It was good.
It was necessary. It's totally necessary. Oh my God, we're gonna spiral. We're gonna spiral.
All right, nice presentation.
So I put this budget on her last name is Bond, B-O-N-D, like James Bond. So I have her in my phone as Bond Girl. And so she texted me, a lady was in the car with me, and she's like, who's Bond Girl? I'm like, it's my girlfriend. She's like, well, I was kind of wondering, because it seems very like, you know, risque or like nice to like. So you still don't know? You don't have it? Did they give you a diagnosis? Are you still limbo?
Yeah, I'm still a little bit in limbo. What I was telling them was,
Anything tense? Looking at. Catherine and John. I could get through that.
Get the show on the way.
right, if we can. We'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I had just a couple quick questions myself, and then I don't know if others had some questions. I was wondering, do we offer any support over the summer to our ELL students?
So we don't. We don't have a summer program currently.
Okay.
We were thinking about it, but it's not going to happen this summer.
Okay,
We have thought about it.
okay, all right.
And there may be students who are in, for example, like the ESY or the ELF program, who also are co-serviced or twice exceptional. I was not familiar with that term. And so they may be ELs who are receiving a special ed summer program.
Sure, yeah, I was,
That would be a much smaller number.
yeah, I was thinking more about students that maybe don't qualify for that program, but maybe it would help to have some additional English over the summer. Something to keep thinking about, I guess. And then the other thing, and I may have been in the parent guide that you had a link to, but I was just wondering whether we provide information to the parents or guardians of our students about where they can go to have some English lessons for themselves, like whether.
I do that through the newsletter.
Okay.
On the newsletter, I point to different opportunities. There are many with BOCES, EOC, so there are places around.
Okay, so we share that with them.
Yeah, I even include information about the New American Office from New York State and from programs that help refugees and immigrants.
Great, thank you. Catherine, do you have a question? Meredith?
I was just wondering how we decide which school to send the children to.
Well, if it's not their home school.
Right.
If it's Ellesmere or Hammergrill, it's a combination. Dr. Hurst has a big role there. I know that we look at how close the family is. Many of our families have cousins, relatives, friends. If that's the case, we try to put them in a place that they are already there, because that friend, relative, or whomever they know already knows the school culture, can help them navigate how the teachers operate and such.
Okay. So, and forgive me because I don't really truly understand how E&L works as a teaching tool, but do you try to group specific languages within a school? Like, we have a large Turkish population, you were saying. Do we send all the children who speak Turkish to one school, or do we divide it so that there's?
So not exactly.
Okay.
Sometimes it would be very convenient if we have teachers in our faculty that speak other languages. Sometimes it would be very convenient to think that it would be great to send a student there. There are many other factors that come into place. Not just that. Dr. Hirsch has talked to the principals about the size of the classes, specific grade in a school. If Slingerland's right now in the first grade has a very big number of E&L students. So when we receive another first grader, we try to avoid adding to the already overloaded case in one school. So that's also another factor.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Willa?
I did have two questions. I'm glad to hear that we don't try to group languages that way, just from a diversity perspective. I think that sounds like a better idea to share those students throughout the schools. I was wondering about, I don't want to put you on this, I'm not going to put you on the spot, so I'm not going to say I don't want you to. I'm not going to. My question was going to be whether or not we had enough E&L specialists in each building. I don't need you to answer that, but in the event that we do not, I hope that you would bring that to the board as part of a budget proposal. I'm not clear whether any of these specialists are sharing buildings or traveling throughout the day. It sounds like a lot of student schedules to split, very much the way special ed educators have to split their time, and it feels like there's never enough of them. So I will just make that a statement, not a question. And the students who are in commanding status, I think those are the students who, they stop receiving services but are sort of followed by the program. Is that what happens?
It's a combination. We still see them. The teachers still have them in their classrooms, visit their classrooms, but they make determinations. Sometimes we can see a student more than the 18 minutes a day or 90 minutes a week because, by the way, commanding comes from something that I should point out. There are two ways of getting to commanding. You can score commanding on the nicest lab, and that would make you truly commanding, in my opinion. But there's an accountability option. The students that take the ELA 3-8 test, if they score a 3 or a 4, obviously, but if they score at least a 3, and then they also score expanding on the nicest lab, then the state has established that that student becomes a commanding student. I don't know how we all feel about the ELA test, but I know that it's a multiple choice test. It doesn't measure speaking or listening, which are two crucial areas for language proficiency development in our opinion. So if a student is able to make the right guesses on the multiple choice, we could probably be looking at a student that is not truly commanding. So the teachers are the key at making those determinations because, again, they see them every day and they know. It's usually not the case, though, in Bethlehem. Our students do very well. They advance through the proficiency levels. I mean, they're very well treated at home. They are comfortable in their classrooms. They're very well received. So in general terms, they make those advances truly, and then we're able to just see them with limited exposure and not interrupt their day too much once they're proficient.
And for those students that are at the elementary level, are they allowed to remain in the schools that they were moved to until they finish elementary
I
school, or
think
do we
so.
shift them back to their home schools at that?
I don't know that's the case, and I doubt that we would prefer to do that. I mean, right now we have one of the students, I was talking to Ms. Haas today, and one of the students is moving to Ellesmere area. They've been at the school they're in for a while, so I was telling her, I would prefer that the student stays there. They already know the school culture, if they feel comfortable. The student's doing very well, by the way, so we try to make those efforts.
Okay.
We give love to our students. We don't look at the numbers. We look at them.
I was
It's
hoping
more
that was the
important.
answer. And I just wanted to say thank you for the group that not only stayed for the night, but more for the work that you do every day. I think we only sort of understand what ENL specialists do on a daily basis, and it's just such a special population, and we really appreciate you guys.
Thank you for your words, and we could see how well they do. They were here. By the way, I will always agree with the statement that we need more ENL specialists. I will never disagree with it.
I
Did
just
you have
wanted
a
to say
question?
thank you also, knowing how much time it takes to communicate with the families and the students, and it's not just the minutes that you teach in class. I'm sure they pop in and need your help in between, and so we appreciate all that you do, and we know that you work hard at it. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your
Absolutely.
presentation.
Listen, I want to say, the pictures there. It would be great if we could just see it, and I would feel so good that the students at least, were honored. I'm sorry for that. I don't know what happened.
We'd be happy to have you send it to us. You certainly,
Click refresh, please. Thank you.
there we go. There we go.
Great pictures.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to help your students, and it's adorable to see them in the classroom. There's nothing else to say.
Yeah, certainly if anybody wants to come visit the school and spend some time in the classroom, see it in action, let us know.
Oh, I like that.
you.
I want to come.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I like that idea.
I was thinking that the whole time, like.
Thank you. I'm going to pause for a minute so these guys can. Thank you. Next on the agenda is recognition of public comment on an agenda item. If we have anybody who would like to address the board on an agenda item, now is the time. Item 6, action items. A, finance action items. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following finance action items 1 through 4.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. B, professional personnel action items. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following professional personnel action items 1 through 6.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. C, support personnel action items. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following support staff action item 1.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. D, other action items. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following action item number 1.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. E, the Capital Region BOCES Board Member Election for 2023. It is recommended by Capital Region BOCES that the Board of Education vote on items 1 through 4 listed below as a slate to elect all 4 candidates on the ballot for board members of the Capital Region BOCES.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item F, the 2023-2024 Capital Region BOCES Administrative Budget. It is recommended by Capital Region BOCES that the Board of Education vote to approve the following Capital District Board of Cooperative Educational Services Administrative Budget.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item 7, recognition of public comment on a non-agenda item. At this time, if we have anyone who would like to address the board on a non-agenda item, now is the time to come forward. Item 8, future meetings and events. On April 24th at 6:30 PM, we have a policy committee meeting at the high school. On May 3rd is our next regularly scheduled board meeting and our hearing on the budget. And we're anticipating that will start, anticipating executive session at 6 and the regular meeting opening at 7. May 10th at 6:30 will be the Meet the Candidates event, which my understanding is that will be virtual through Zoom. So information will go out about that. On May 16th, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. is the annual budget vote and election in the high school gymnasium. And then on May 17th is the next board meeting after that, starting at 7, anticipating executive session at 6. I don't think there's any need to go back into executive session. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.